We concluded with the last recording with this picture here showing how thyroid hormone is made. We showed how the thyroglobulin molecule is made. We showed how iodide was trapped, converted to iodine. This through oxidation reaction, and then the formation of thyroid hormone stored in colloid. When thyroid hormone is required, endocytosis pulls this in. It then goes in, lysosome vessels split up the thyroid globulin molecule, releasing T3, T4. This is carried in this vesicle. Exocytosis would then take it and place it in the bloodstream as T3 and T4. That's where we ended last time. So let's go a little further there. And so we've already discussed this. We've discussed it step by step. So I'm going to pass by all of this, and you can study this in your PowerPoint section. Okay. And T3 and T4 are lipid soluble. So what's going to happen is, come here, that they are going to be bound in the bloodstream, because lipid soluble substance, they're going to be bound in the bloodstream by carrier protein. The main one is thyrobinding globulin, you can see, and then there's an albumin and prealbumin. The free fraction, and I discussed this in an earlier, the free fraction is the one that's active. The bound fraction, but the minute a free fraction is liberated from the bloodstream, so a unit from the bound will replace it. So it's still in an equilibrium type balance. Okay? So it's being carried by this. Then when thyroid hormone, so that's the carrying, when thyroid hormone gets to its target cell, which would have receptors, so let's say a target cell could be the bone or whatever, then let's say here's T4, that's being carried. It would release, go into the cell. So I come here, T4 and T3 are transported by thyroid, which we just talked about. They both bind to target receptors, but T3 is 10 times more active than T4. So both are released. There's more T4 released than T3, more T4, but look here, when T4, which is in the largest quantity in the blood, but is not as powerful as T3, is released into the cell, enzymes within the cell can convert T4 to T3. Then inside the cell, since it is lipid soluble, cytoplasmic proteins will bind it and then carry it into the nucleus, and in the nucleus it will attach to a receptor on the DNA itself to cause its action. Okay? So we go further then. Negative feedback. Go here if I can find one. Negative feedback works on this, the regulation. All right, so here, let's look at the scheme. The hypothalamus releases something called thyroid releasing hormone from the thyrotropes in the anterior pituitary. TRH will travel down. You remember that primary portal plexus, venous transport plexus, and secondary portal plexus to the anterior pituitary. Okay, so TRH is secreted by the hypothalamus, goes to the anterior pituitary, the thyrotropes. On there, TSH is released, thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid stimulating hormone then will go to the thyroid gland, sit on the follicular cells to cause release of some thyroid hormone and production of new thyroid hormone in the colloid. Thyroid hormone then is released into the bloodstream, goes to the target cells. We just showed how that would occur in the target cell, ultimately binding to the DNA. But what we're showing is the feedback, that this feedback keeps it in a relative concentration, properly positioned, homeostasis. Okay. So that's what this is, hypothalamic releasing hormone. Okay, so we go a little further. Here's that picture there also. I go here. Homeostatic imbalances. Okay, in adults, if there's hyposecretion, it's called myxedema. Okay, and it can be a goiter, which is a neck mass, will form because generally this is lack of iodine. So what will happen is, since thyroid hormone is not being secreted enough because there's not enough iodine, the hypothalamus does not realize that, and neither does the anterior pituitary. So they keep pushing and pushing it to secrete. So all that happens is more follicles develop, but nothing released. More follicles develop with an ineffective thyroglobulin because it's no longer making the hormone. So there's a protrusion at the neck. See if I can find this. 33. There's a protrusion at the neck with this goiter. Protrusion at the neck, endemic goiter. Hyposecretion in infants is called cretinism, and they can have brain difficulties and so forth. Then we have Hashimoto's disease and hypersecretion. Okay, I'm gonna come back here. So I'm gonna keep that slide. All right, we talked about thyroid binding globulin. We talked about the action. Okay, so again, let me just go through transport. Thyroid hormone is lipophilic, therefore it's transported bound to proteins such as TBG and the others. 1/2 to 1/3 and works with TBG. Is the bound form is inactive, but it's in equilibrium with the free form, which is biologically active, which is the one that's released. Okay, so we go further now. Okay, Graves' disease. Go further to Graves' disease. Graves' disease is where the immune system makes some antibodies, and strangely, the antibodies resemble TSH. So the antibodies, this autoimmune reaction causes antibodies to be released that resemble TSH, and since it resembles TSH, it causes a hypersecretion of thyroid hormone. So Graves' disease is an autoimmune condition which causes hyperthyroidism. Okay? In hyperthyroidism, you have many things: increased sweating, certain weight loss, because remember, thyroid hormone is calorigenic. What it does is it increases the basal metabolic rate, and so it starts burning a lot of calories. Okay? Sweating, fine hair. Remember thyroid hormones also involved with the hair. It promotes normal secretion of the skin, hydration. Brittle hair would be due to not having enough hydration, because remember, hair can be dry. The cuticle layer of the hair shaft, go back and study hair, needs to be moistened. Increased heart rate and increase the basal metabolic rate. Nervousness, irritability, tremor, difficulty sleeping, and then you got the bulging eyes. You have the bulging eyes, which is also called exophthalmos. The retrobulbar fat starts pushing this out. Hypothyroidism. Okay. But in the treatment of hyperthyroidism, can be this. It could be radioactive iodine to go in. Radioactive iodine would be picked up by the thyroid to kind of irradiate the thyroid from within. Surgical removal, drugs would be used as treatment. Okay. Hashimoto's disease, I wanted to bring up. Okay. Hashimoto's disease is interesting. In this case, this is another autoimmune condition. but it is diametrically opposite to Graves' disease. Hashimoto's thyroiditis is where inflammation of the thyroid gland, but these particular antibodies produced in that condition attack the thyroid gland, attack it. So it causes hypothyroidism. So let's go back. Graves' disease, autoimmune antibodies resemble TSH, causing hyperthyroidism. Hashimoto's autoimmune antibodies produced but attack the thyroid gland, causing hypothyroidism with the various symptoms of hypothyroidism. Okay? So we go, and here, just to show you some of the contrast: hypothyroidism, hair loss; hyperfine brittle hair; fatigue; sensitivity to cold; excess sweating. So you can see this difference between the two. I'll give you a second to glance at that. You can see this difference between the two of hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism. Okay? So then when it comes to treatment of hypothyroidism, then we need to give hormone. So there are different ways. You can give T3, you can give T4. If it's an iodine deficiency, increase the dietary of iodine. So the treatment depends on what the cause is. And this is true in all of medicine. The treatment depends on what the cause is. Okay? So that's what we're looking at in this thyroid condition. Okay? I'm going to close here, and then I'm going to bring up calcium balance. Calcium balance next. Okay? Dealing with hormones.